Japanese denim isn't a monolith. That should not be surprising. It's more of an ecosystem. So consider this a disclaimer. If you are here to learn about this ecosystem, you've come to the right place. Now, if you're ready to buy a pair for yourself, you've likely come to the right place again, but this is not really about selling you on it. But if you're here simply because Japanese denim is popular right now, hopefully this will save you the trouble, or better yet, shift your perspective entirely. Because within this ecosystem, there is a vastly different direction for the person who wants something heavyweight versus the person who wants something visually unique, or the person who's seeking something with immediate comfort versus the one prioritizing absolute quality. So with that said, I'm Reggie Casual, and today we look at the archetypes of Japanese denim. We got 5 of them. Let's get it. Before we get into the mechanics, if you enjoy exploring Japanese culture, history, and systems behind fashion, consider subscribing. We're refining the mission here at The Casual to bring you closer to the hidden knowledge of Tokyo, and your support genuinely helps us build that network. With that said, back to the episode. So we begin our journey with entry-level Japanese denim. Essentially, this is the most visible, most available, most profitable, and requires the least amount of commitment. Now, this tier is notable for using modern manufacturing processes, but under the watchful eye of made in Japan standards. Now, to be fair, this class of Japanese denim isn't necessarily better than a brand that is made somewhere else, like, say, the United States, that takes its craft seriously. But in Japan, this is a baseline and not an outlier, which means it arguably offers the highest value to entry ratio in the entire market. Brands like Japan Blue or the Made in Japan lines from Edwin occupy this tier and still utilize the same legendary shuttle looms in Okayama, but to scale. So you get that lineage, the selvage ID, the rope-dyed indigo, and the superior hardware, but delivered in a package that is designed to be worn and lived in immediately, coupled with a price tag that won't shock you. It can be expensive, but not nearly as expensive as the other ones on this list. Now, this is also where it significantly is more forgiving. While many purists may demand 100% cotton, many brands in this tier utilize innovations from powerhouses like Kaihara Mills, who have mastered a 98% cotton, 2% poly stretch selvage blend. It retains the character and the fading potential of traditional denim, but it yields to your body more immediately, removing that cardboard stiffness many are afraid of. More importantly, when you choose a pair from this category, you're doing something that goes largely unnoticed by the average consumer and even by many purists. You are actively participating in the preservation of the Japanese denim infrastructure. How so? Well, large-scale orders from brands like Edwin and Japan Blue are what keep the lights on in many mills in Okayama, which in turn creates the capacity for them to take risks on low-volume, high-concept runs for much smaller brands. So as we leave the entry level, we're right in the arena of the enthusiasts. And naturally, the first up is the Archivist / reproduction archetype. The Repro bracket is quite often the safest bet in the Japanese denim world, meshing quality, familiarity, and genuine historical fidelity. These Japanese denim labels are likely the ones you may have heard of because they are the ones that spearheaded the reproduction movement that arrived in the 70s and 80s. This is the world of the Osaka 5, brands like Warehouse, Full Count, OG Vizu, and others that are Osaka 5 but still hold to that golden era of American workwear spanning from the late 1930s to the mid-1960s, like TCB. For these brands, the 1947 Levi's 501 serves as the guiding light, the pinnacle of denim design that they believe has never been improved upon, which ironically means this tier should be the most familiar type of Japanese denim for American consumers. We're talking about the exact weight of 13.5-ounce denim, the specific copper rivets that were used, the use of the same zinc-plated buttons, and the insistence on 100% cotton thread that will eventually snap and fray exactly like the pairs found in the mines of Nevada. In a strange way, these brands are literally manufacturing museum pieces for daily wear, and as such, this archetype is often reserved for purists and vintage hunters alike. But I have to be honest here. For many in the denim community, these aren't just items bought for heavy daily wear as much as they are bought for respect. So owning a pair isn't just about fade, fidelity, quality. It's a study, like a physical reference point for what correct looks like. While brands in this category like Sugarcane and Full Count have added their own flourishes by focusing on specific traditional methods or immediate wear comfort, a purchase is also a silent nod to the history and make of denim. Now we get into the heavyweights, quite literally. And here is where things get a bit more serious, especially for the hardcore denim community. Because heavyweight denim is unique in that no one before Japan thought anything over 12 to 13 ounce denim was a viable option for general consumption. Now, if you were in a rodeo or working a high friction industrial job, sure, Wrangler had you covered with a heavy utility pant, but just to wear? Not quite. That is until Edwin made a 15 ounce in 1963 to prove that Japan could produce a garment that felt more substantial than American imports. And they didn't even call it heavyweight at the time. That is until 1998, when a brand by the name of Samurai made heavyweight a legitimate category of denim and created a subculture where a small but significant group of cult brands duke it out in an ultimate spec war, where 25 ounce denim is the pinnacle and 18 ounces like child's play. A place where craft is more important than expansion. Initially popular among Japanese motorcycle groups, these cult brands are now celebrated by those who truly want to experience the extremes of what denim can do. This is the land of Oni, Samurai, Ironheart, the Flathead, where a brand can say 200 pairs will be released, but if 110 are not up to spec after they reach the inspectors, we, the public, are only seeing 90. This denim is stiff as a cardboard, can stand on its own. Breaking in a pair guarantees a painful experience. They can bruise and scratch your body due to their stiffness. It's probably why some of these guys come off as angry in the denim community. You'd be angry too if it took you 12 to 18 months of pain and constant wear to get the perfect fades. And perfect is the right word. Due to their stiffness, heavyweight denim often creates the sharpest fades, leading to some of the most dynamic pairs of denim in the denim world, but it takes time and serious care. But while the heavy duty is often lauded for this durability, they also tend to wear out the fastest due to blowout. So what does that mean? Well, heavyweight denim is so thick and rigid, it doesn't just move with the body, it resists. This creates intense friction that causes the cotton to literally snap. But within this culture, that failure isn't a defect. It triggers the repair phase. Whether it's a professional darning or heavy sachiko patching, these repairs serve as a physical testament to dedication and add personal character. So quite simply, the heavyweight category is for the hardest of the hardcore. Now, admittedly, Japanese heavyweight denim is probably the heart of hardcore denim discussions, and it can be intense. Repro and entry-level models are good, but perhaps they lack that flavor. This next archetype, however, offers something a bit more dynamic and immediate. So we're gonna call it the Synthesist. This is where Japanese denim producers and brands start looking inward at their own centuries-old textile heritage, effectively making it more Japanese than American. Where brands like Osaka 5 alum but drifted into its own little arena, Studio de Artisan, or brands like Capital and Pure Blue Japan live and use the Western silhouette as a canvas for domestic craft techniques that simply cannot be repeated. We are talking about the integration of ancient dyeing and weaving processes, things like aizome, dorozome, kakishibu, and heavy sashiko weaves. If you are a textile scholar, an art collector, a fashion enthusiast, or someone who simply enjoys the art of Japanese manufacturing and process, forget trying to impress the denim community or be a part of it or any of those things. This is where it goes beyond simple fandom or enthusiasm and in the arena of appreciation. There is a deep narrative value here, signaling an appreciation for the fact that a single garment might have passed through the hands of a master dyer using a technique that is literally 1,000 years old, or woven on looms that haven't been modified since the Meiji era, resulting in some of the most beautiful pieces of craft in Japan. And yes, Japan, period. Not just the denim industry, but the national craft identity as a whole. However, this path requires specific commitment in 3 key areas. First, because of the natural dyes, they are prone to intense indigo bleeding. Things are gonna be blue if you enter here. Second, these items are rare and take a massive amount of time to produce. It isn't uncommon for certain releases to take up to 2 years to reach the shelf. Finally, because of the labor and the artisanal methods involved, these are some of the most expensive items in the entire ecosystem. But it is worth it. You are getting something that is uniquely Japanese in this archetype. And finally, we arrive at the modern archetypes. Now, these are labels that still maintain that prestigious made in Japan status, but are more concerned with their own ideas, styles, and influences. Often they are handmade and niche or large scale and experimental. Some labels like Uchida Hose employ unique techniques and maintain a level of quality that is highly regarded within the industry. Others are more style centric, like Or Slow, focusing on the overall comfort and feel of their denim and how it meshes with the other pieces in their catalog. You even see brands like United Arrows focusing on whatever specific flavor they choose, such as patchwork denim that prioritizes the look over utility. Perhaps the most successful modernist archetype brand in the game is Momotaro. They follow the model of the Repro, understand the angle of the Synthesist, and are successfully propped up by the infrastructure of its entry-level sister label, Japan Blue. This is likely the reason Momotaro is constantly referred to as the Japanese denim global standard. But as we mentioned at the outset, it's all a matter of perspective, feel, and what you are looking for. That said, modernist denim brands are an archetype for those who want to discover something more intentional. Say, the stylist who respects a specific point of view or a unique technique. Maybe it takes time to see those special markers like rainbow or sakura embedded threads, but you'll never have to buy another denim jacket or pant again if you love them. Or maybe you just need something that wears well, made well, and is reliable without being obnoxious. This archetype is case dependent and occupied by hundreds of brands, hidden and public alike, and it promotes discovery and the search, which is what this is all about. Now, while some might find this archetype can be gimmicky at times or trendy or fashion dependent, the modernist brands prove that Japanese denim is a living, breathing industry rather than simply a museum of who can do it the best. And those are really the main archetypes. Suppose there's ones that you could put in between, but for the most part, that's what you'll find. But before we wrap this up, we need to take a step back and address something important. There's an argument that the many are ruining the Japanese denim and Americana community and driving up prices. But based on the data, that's not what's happening. While the Japanese denim industry is resilient in terms of passion, the actual infrastructure of the industry is fracturing. Prices aren't rising because of popularity or demand. They are rising because the process is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. We are witnessing a generational shift where master artisans are aging out, mills are closing, and access to both supplies and specialized labor is dwindling. These are real economic challenges facing all of Japan today, let alone the denim industry. At this very moment, many of the legendary Japanese mills and manufacturers are entering into deals with Parisian houses and global luxury conglomerates just to stay afloat. This moves the best of Japanese craft away from the niche independent labels and into the supply chains of some of the most powerful fashion houses in Europe. To add to that, only 2% of the clothes sold in Japan today are actually made in Japan. That's all clothes. Now let that sink in real quick. In the 90s, it was 50%. That means the denim industry isn't being bombarded with trend-driven consumers, it's in survival mode. So what does this mean? To ensure the continuity of the Japanese denim industry, we need more individuals to have interest in Japanese denim, not less. Without growth, the very industry many of you love will whittle down to a handful of labels that can withstand the sea change. And ironically, what makes the Japanese denim industry so incredibly strong is that it historically hasn't been strict about who is invited to the table. These brands proudly reveal their process, share their knowledge, and reveal how things are made so that the consumer feels a genuine connection to the craft. By trying to keep the community small and pure, you might be engaging in an effort that is not only antithetical to the brands themselves, but hastens their downfall instead of adding to their success. Japanese denim doesn't need protectors, it needs participants, and more importantly, stewards. Your growing interest is the fuel that keeps those vintage shuttle looms running for another generation. So don't keep it to yourself. Inform the next generation, let them know so they can approach it with the same kind of fervor and interest as you may already have. And with that, I bring it to you. Which of these archetypes do you feel aligns most with you, and why? Let it be known in the comments. And if you want to support this work on cataloging the history, culture, and systems of Japanese fashion more directly, join us on YouTube memberships. Your contribution helps us build better infrastructure and real access so we can get inside the places you're curious about and show you how these systems actually operate. But more importantly, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you found this valuable or entertaining to you. And as always, keep it locked right here for all of your info on international fashion, culture, and business from Tokyo, and keep it casual. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And I will see you all in a minute. Peace.